You ever wonder how people can look you in the eye, smile, act like you mean the world to them, and still walk away like you were just a moment of convenience? That's the game. They play it with no guilt, no shame. And you're left sitting there, holding pieces of yourself that you gave away, thinking it meant something. But let me tell you something real, raw. You didn't lose them. No, they lost you. You deserved more than what they were ever capable of giving. And that's not your fault. It never was. You gave time, energy, heart. You stood there in storms for people who wouldn't even stand in shade for you. You opened doors for hands that only knew how to slam them. You spoke truths to ears that only wanted comfort, not honesty. You were real in a world that rewards the fake. And that hurts. It cuts deep. But don't confuse your scars with shame. They're signs you tried in a world that doesn't even know how to give back. You bled in silence, while they thrived in noise. And you kept showing up, again and again, even when everything inside you begged you to walk away. Let me explain this with cold clarity, because you need to stop blaming yourself. You think your loyalty was the problem? Number. Their greed was. They saw you as infinite, like you'd never run out of love, patience, kindness. They mistook your silence for weakness, your giving for stupidity. They thought they could drain you dry and still expect more. That's what people do when they don't value you. They push and push until there's nothing left to take, and then they say, "You've changed." You didn't change. You just finally saw through the mask, and that's what scared them. You gotta understand something. Not everyone is built like you. Not everyone loves like you. They're used to surface love, cheap, fast, forgettable. But you gave depth. You gave presence. You showed up emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and they didn't know what to do with that. People want the idea of love, not the weight of it. They want the glow, not the grind. So they used you, and the second your love required them to show up too, they ran, because it was never about love for them. It was about what they could extract from it. And here you are now, picking up the pieces, thinking you're the failure. But listen to me, you were the gift, not the other way around. They were lucky to even be near you, and they'll realize it. Maybe not today, maybe not next year. But there will come a night when their world goes silent, when they crave that kind of presence again, and you won't be there. You won't answer. You won't care, not because you're bitter. Number, but because you've grown, you've healed, you've risen, and the version of you they mistreated is gone, dead, buried, replaced by something colder, stronger, unbreakable. You deserved more than they were willing to give, and they knew it. They knew. But admitting that would have meant facing their own emptiness, their own cowardice, so they blamed you, lied about you, twisted the narrative, played the victim. Typical, because people hate being exposed. They hate standing next to someone who's real. It makes them feel like shadows. And shadows, well, they always resent the light. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people, the wrong crowd, the ones who didn't want to rise. They wanted to drag. They didn't want to love. They wanted to consume. So when you brought love to the table, they brought appetite. When you brought truth, they brought silence. When you brought loyalty, they brought conditions. And now they act confused. Why did you walk away? Because you finally saw the truth. You finally realized that no matter how loud your love was, it would never reach the deaf. Now breathe. Let it all sink in. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not foolish. You're just someone who loved too loud in a world that speaks in whispers. You were gold in a world that wanted copper. You were rain in a drought, and they cursed the flood. But one day, they'll remember the way you made them feel. And they'll look for that in everyone else, but never find it. Never. Because what you gave can't be duplicated. They'll replay the memories like old songs they never appreciated when they had them on repeat. They'll scroll through photos like ghosts chasing echoes, but it'll be too damn late. Because by the time they realize what they let go of, you'll already be gone, changed, elevated, hardened. You'll be standing on a foundation built from all the moments they thought would break you. See, that's what they never understood. You don't stay broken forever. Nah. Some people fall apart to rebuild better, stronger, colder. You were never meant to stay on your knees. You were meant to rise. And when you rise, you don't come back the same. You come back with silence in your veins and fire in your eyes. They laughed when you cried. They disappeared when you needed them most. They talked behind your back and hugged you with lies. And through all that, you still loved, still showed up, still believed in them. That's the kind of heart you have. The kind that keeps beating even when it's bruised. But don't mistake that heart for weakness. Number. That kind of heart, that's warrior stuff. That's the rarest thing in this rotten world. And it scares people. Scares the cowards. Because your love demands presence, effort, truth. And most people, they're allergic to realness. They want easy. They want safe. They want control. You were none of that. You were a damn storm. Unpredictable. Raw. Pure. So they ran. They thought you'd chase. Thought you'd beg. But you didn't. Not this time. And now their silence is louder than their words ever were. They scroll your page, watch your life from the shadows, waiting for a sign of weakness, hoping for a crack, but all they find is distance, cold, silence. And that's the real punishment. Not revenge, not rage. Just the absence of your presence. Just the empty space you left behind. Because no scream hurts more than the one you don't make. No goodbye hits harder than the one that comes without a sound. You were the calm in their chaos, the anchor in their storm. You listened when no one else did, understood what they couldn't even explain, and they threw it away like it was replaceable, as if people like you grow on trees, as if loyalty can be found in DMs and weekend flings. But one day, they'll sit across from someone who can't hold a conversation past 2 minutes, and they'll remember you. They'll compare every new connection to what you were, and no one will measure up, because you weren't just a lover. You were a shelter, a safe place, a mirror to their soul, and they shattered it. Let's talk real for a second. You were always too much for small minds, too deep for shallow waters. You loved in ways that required healing to understand, and they weren't healed. They were broken and comfortable in their mess. So your presence, it exposed them, made them feel like they weren't enough. And instead of rising to meet your level, they chose to pull you down. That's what cowards do. That's what the insecure do. They project, they deflect, they sabotage. But now they're stuck with themselves. And you're free. Free from the lies, from the confusion, from the games. You're walking in truth now. And nothing is more powerful than a soul that's done begging to be seen. You see, what they really feared wasn't your anger, it was your silence. Because silence, that's where the truth lives. That's where people finally sit with themselves and realize what they lost. You used to explain yourself. You used to fight to be understood. You used to try to fix things you didn't even break, but not anymore. You learned that the loudest revenge is no revenge at all. It's peace. It's building in private, winning in silence, glowing without letting them touch the light. They thought you'd crumble without them. Instead, you became untouchable. They expected you to stay soft. And now you're ice. Not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started loving yourself more. They'll say you changed. That's their favorite line. You're not who you used to be. And they're damn right. You evolved. You grew through the pain they gave you. Through every night they left you alone with your thoughts. Every message they ignored. Every call they declined. That pain became your training ground. That silence became your fuel. And now you've got scars that whisper power. Lessons etched into your soul. They thought they were hurting you, but they were building you. And they won't like who you became, because now you don't need them. You see through them. And that's the kind of power that makes the ones who once played you start shaking. You know what the saddest part is? They knew you were rare, knew it, but they gambled anyway. They bet you'd always be there, always forgive, always stay. And that's the thing about people who take your kindness for granted. They forget that storms don't always announce themselves. One day, you just go silent. You just stop answering, stop showing up, stop caring. And it's not out of hate, it's out of self-respect, out of exhaustion, out of the kind of deep pain that doesn't scream, it disappears. And once you're gone, nothing feels like you. Nothing replaces you. Not the new ones, not the distractions, not the fake love they chase trying to feel whole again. You were the realest thing in their life, and they let it go, thinking they could do better. But better never came, and it won't. Let's break something down here. Real love doesn't ask you to beg. Real love doesn't make you feel like a burden. Real love doesn't ghost you, confuse you, or make you question your worth. If you ever had to chase it, clarify it, or cry for it, it wasn't love, it was control, it was ego, it was convenience wrapped in fake promises. And you were always all in. You gave without keeping score. You stayed loyal even when it hurt. You put them above your own needs, and they still walked away. Or worse, they stayed while treating you like an option. That's the kind of betrayal that teaches you to never love blindly again. You deserved consistency, deserved depth, deserved truth. And they gave you half-hearted affection with full expectations. That's the kind of imbalance that breaks people. But you didn't break. You burned. And from those ashes, you built. So don't you dare let this world convince you that you were the problem. Don't let their guilt become your identity. You were gold in a world addicted to glitter. They were blind, not you. And now that your eyes are open, you'll never unsee the truth, never unlearn the lesson, never shrink to fit inside their world again. Now here's the twist they never saw coming. You didn't just move on, you leveled up, quietly, without the need to post about it, to flaunt it, or to prove anything. You just vanished from their chaos and reappeared in your own peace. And that's what's eating them alive. Not the silence, not the distance, but the fact that they didn't get a front row seat to your rise. They thought they'd always have access. They thought you'd always orbit around their mess. But you stopped spinning. You stopped chasing ghosts. And now they're stuck replaying your absence like a movie they regret never watching to the end. You see, people don't change when you cry. They don't change when you explain, when you scream, when you beg. They change when you leave, when you go quiet, when they feel the weight of your absence like a storm that never stops raining. That's when they get it. That's when regret kicks in like a slow poison. They realize that all your love, all your energy, all your loyalty, it wasn't a phase, it wasn't a game, it was real. It was once in a lifetime, and they flushed it. Out of boredom, out of pride, out of not being ready for something that didn't come with a mask or a script. They weren't built for someone who shows up with no agenda. You were the truth, and they were still addicted to lies. And let's be real, you loved them harder than they deserved. You saw the best in them when they were nothing but red flags and broken promises. You stayed during storms they created. You forgave things that shattered your boundaries. You explained yourself to people who had no intention of understanding. And now you're tired. Not just tired of them, but tired of being that version of you, the one who tolerated, who adjusted, who dimmed the light just so others wouldn't feel insecure around your shine. But that version is gone. And what's left? That's something they'll never have access to again. You gotta understand this deep. Some people only love you when you're broken, when you're begging, when you're unsure of your worth, because your power scares them. Your peace threatens them. Your self-love exposes their insecurities. So they try to confuse you, distract you, keep you running in circles while calling it love. But once you wake up, once you truly see what they were doing, the spell breaks, the game ends, and suddenly they become the desperate ones, desperate to explain, to reconnect, to rewind. But the clock doesn't move backward. And you're not waiting anymore, because you finally realized what the real win is. It's not proving them wrong. It's not making them regret it. It's not revenge. It's peace. It's waking up without anxiety in your chest. It's laughing again, trusting yourself again, walking without looking over your shoulder, loving without fearing betrayal. That's what they couldn't give you. Not because you didn't deserve it, but because they were never capable of it. You were asking a puddle to behave like an ocean. That's not your fault. It's theirs. They lacked depth. They lacked presence. And you had oceans in your soul. You were too vast for their shallow hearts. And now, every time they try to move on, to replace what you gave them with someone else, they come face to face with the truth. They're not missing a person, they're missing a presence. Yours. That steady, calming, all-consuming presence that made them feel seen, even when they couldn't see themselves. That unshakable energy that held their chaos without collapsing. They thought it was easy to find again. Thought someone else could step in and play your role. But what they're learning, the hard way, is that some roles were written for only one soul. And you were the one. Not just another chapter. You were the story they should have built around, but they chose to rip the pages and chase distractions instead. You taught them what loyalty looked like, what patience felt like, what real love sounded like in a world full of noise, and they mistook it for background music, played you on low volume while they danced with others. They thought you'd stay on loop, But now the music's gone, and silence has become their punishment. The kind that echoes in rooms where your laughter used to live. The kind that creeps in late at night when the fake smiles fade and the masks fall off. That's when your name crawls back into their mind like a ghost with unfinished business. But ghosts don't respond, and neither do you. They'll try to guilt you. They'll play the victim. They'll say you gave up too soon, that you changed, that you never really cared. But they're not crying for you. They're crying for the control they lost, for the comfort they took for granted, for the soft heart that finally grew teeth, because nothing terrifies the selfish more than losing the one who made excuses for their behavior. And that's what you were. You were the safe space, the one who forgave before an apology, the one who stayed even when every part of you was screaming to walk. But you're not that person anymore. Now, you demand peace, and you protect it like a soldier with scars. People say, you deserve better, like it's some cheap slogan. But the truth is, you deserved more than they were ever willing to give. Not better. More effort, more honesty, more clarity, more consistency. You weren't asking for perfection, just presence, just truth, just someone who meant it when they said, I'm here. But they gave you crumbs and expected you to bake a feast. They brought confusion and called it mystery. They brought games and labeled it challenge. And now they realize the price of losing someone who only ever wanted to see them win. So don't you dare lower your standards. Don't you dare second guess your value. You didn't lose a real one. They lost you. You don't go backwards for people who treated you like a pit stop. You don't reopen doors you had to crawl through just to get love. You walk, you move, you evolve. And when they come knocking with their excuses and their memories and their empty promises, don't answer. Let them feel the same silence they forced you to survive in. Let that be their lesson, because you're not just walking away, you're walking up, higher, stronger, louder in your silence than you ever were in your pain. You know what really cuts deep for them? It's not that you left. It's that you never looked back. You didn't leave breadcrumbs, didn't drop hints, didn't scream for attention. You just disappeared, like a chapter that suddenly ends mid-sentence, leaving them rereading every page, wondering how they missed the signs. And that's the part they'll never forgive you for, your silence. Because silence says everything. It says, I'm done. It says, you drained me. It says, you had your chance, and you blew it. No theatrics, no closure, just absence. And that absence, that's louder than any final word. They never thought you'd find the strength to let go. They underestimated the pain you were holding back. You see, strong people don't scream when they're hurt. They bleed quietly. They keep showing up while breaking inside. And You did. You stayed loyal through disappointment. You stayed kind when you were being ignored. You stayed consistent when they were hot and cold. But the thing about people like you is this. Once we hit that breaking point, there's no return. There's no soft landing. There's just ice, silence, distance. And it burns more than rage ever could. They thought you were replaceable, that someone else would come along and give them the same comfort, the same devotion, the same soul. But they forgot one thing. You can't replace energy. You can mimic it, pretend, force it. But real energy, the kind that heals, that sees, that stays, that can't be found in everyone. That's once in a lifetime. And now they're trapped in connections that feel like copies of you. Faces with no depth, voices with no warmth, bodies with no soul. And all of a sudden, they realize you weren't just someone. You were the one. You were the type that remembered the small things, that noticed the changes in their tone, their energy, their silence. The type that asked twice, even when they said they were fine. The type that stayed up at 3 a.m. just to make sure they didn't fall asleep broken. And they threw that away like it meant nothing. Why? Because they thought you'd always be there. That no matter how many times they pushed you, you'd bounce back. That no matter how little they gave, you'd never leave, but you did. And now they're realizing what they lost wasn't a person, it was a sanctuary, a peace they'll never find again. So let them talk. Let them twist the story. Let them pretend they're the victim. Because deep down, they know. They know who was real, who showed up, who stayed solid when everything was falling apart. And they know they broke it. They destroyed something they didn't even understand. And now they'll spend years looking for a version of you that doesn't exist anywhere else. Because you were the original. And they let go of that. Like it was disposable. And what stings them the most is realizing that they didn't just lose someone who loved them. They lost someone who understood them. That's rare. You weren't just there to be loved or admired. You were the one who saw through their layers, past the facade, into the mess beneath. You saw their wounds and didn't flinch. You didn't run. You embraced their chaos with calm. You made their silence feel safe. And still, they treated you like an option. Like you'd always be around to fix what they kept breaking. But here's the thing. Even the strongest hearts get tired. And you got tired of carrying a connection that was one-sided, of investing in someone who only showed up when it was convenient. They didn't love you wrong because you weren't enough. They loved you wrong because they were incapable of love that deep. You were loving from a healed place, a whole place. They were loving from trauma, from fear, from survival. You wanted to build. They wanted to escape. You wanted connection. They wanted control. You gave softness. They mistook it for weakness. So they played with your emotions like they were toys, unaware they were holding something rare. And when you finally left, not with anger, not with revenge, but with peace, that's when they realized they weren't ready for someone like you. Not then. Maybe not ever. See, people get addicted to your energy, especially when it's the only real thing they've felt in a long time. And once it's gone, everything else feels empty, boring, shallow. So they try to fill the void with noise, parties, people, distractions. But nothing sticks. Because once you've tasted something real, the fake burns your throat, and you were real. Every word, every gesture, every late night conversation, you gave them a version of love that wasn't about possession, but presence. And that's a language they didn't understand. So they chose to walk, or worse, they stayed, but made you feel alone anyway. That's cruelty. Being next to someone and still feeling miles apart. But here's where you win. Not by proving anything, not by begging to be remembered. You win by becoming untouchable. By becoming the version of yourself you kept burying for people who didn't deserve you. You win by healing, not to spite them, but to honor yourself. You win by never needing to explain your worth again, because you've seen the difference between attention and love, between effort and excuses, between being chosen out of need and being chosen out of want. And you'll never settle again. Not after this. Not after what you've survived. They'll scroll through your life like a highlight reel of what could have been. They'll wonder if you ever think of them, if you still remember. But what they don't know is you've turned that pain into power. You don't just remember, you've learned, and now you move with intention, with clarity, with boundaries they can't cross anymore. Because you're not looking back, you're not reaching out, you're not waiting for closure. You are the closure. And the hardest pill they'll ever swallow is knowing that you were willing to give them the world. If only they had asked with respect, with consistency, with honesty. But they didn't. They wanted to taste your light without feeding your fire. They wanted the comfort of you without the commitment to you. So they played, took and took. And when you finally walked away, they called you cold, heartless, ungrateful. But deep down, behind all that noise and projection, they know what really happened. They gambled with something sacred and lost. Now everywhere they go, they'll search for your energy in others. They'll look for that same calm in someone else's chaos, that same softness in someone else's voice, that same depth in someone else's soul. But people like you don't happen twice. You were a combination of warmth and wisdom, fire and patience, chaos and clarity. You were the kind of person who could hold someone together while falling apart yourself, and they never notice. That's what breaks your heart, isn't it? Not that they left, but that they never really saw you. They loved the version of you that made their life easier. But the real you, the one with boundaries, with pain, with needs, that was too much for them. And now, while they fumble through shallow connections, you're finally learning to love yourself in ways they never could. You've learned that peace isn't found in people. It's found in letting them go, in choosing yourself, in becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive heartbreak, but builds empires from the ashes. You're no longer waiting for apologies that won't come, for clarity that won't arrive, for closure that'll never be honest. You've stopped trying to rewrite the story. You've accepted the end. And in that acceptance, you found power. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. The kind that walks away and doesn't turn around. Let them wonder. Let them ask themselves what they did wrong. Let them replay every conversation in their mind, searching for where it all went cold. Because now, you owe them nothing. Not a reply, not an explanation, not even a glance. What you owe is to yourself, to rebuild, to shine, to never allow that kind of disrespect to wear the mask of love again. You owe yourself the kind of loyalty you used to give away so easily to people who never earned it. And the next time someone steps to you, they'll be met with standards, with silence, with the version of you that refuses to pour into broken cups. You were never hard to love. You were just too real for the ones who were still hiding behind pretty lies. And now that you've healed, they can't even approach you without trembling. Not because you're mean, but because they remember. They remember what it felt like to be loved by someone who actually meant it. And now they'll spend a lifetime chasing ghosts, while you move forward in peace, untouched, unbothered, untouchable. Because now you've become what they feared most, someone who doesn't need them anymore. That dependency they used to manipulate you, that hope they twisted to their advantage, it's all gone, and that terrifies them. Because as long as you needed them, they had power. Power to control your emotions, power to delay their effort, power to disappear and return whenever it suited them. But now, you've starved that connection of your energy. You've cut the supply. And they're left gasping for a version of you that no longer exists. Because healing doesn't make you soft. It makes you selective. It teaches you that peace is worth more than history. That love without respect is just a transaction. And you're done selling pieces of yourself for scraps of affection. They'll wear their new smiles, post their staged joy, and act like they've moved on. But late at night, when the fake world quiets, that's when your name hits them like a punch to the chest. Not because you're perfect, not because they want another chance, but because they finally understand who you were. Not the version they created in their twisted narratives. Not the exaggerated flaws they told others about to feel better. But the truth. The one who stayed when it hurt. the one who gave when there was nothing to gain, the one who believed in them when even they didn't. And realizing they pushed that away, that's a kind of regret that doesn't go away. It just gets heavier with time. And the irony, you were never asking for much. Just effort, just truth, just someone to care as deeply as you did, but they couldn't, or they wouldn't. Either way, they failed you. They showed you exactly who they were when it counted, and you believed them. You stopped making excuses for the bare minimum, stopped watering dead roots, stopped pretending it was your job to fix what they never intended to grow. And that shift, that internal click when your heart decided to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer a bandage, that was the beginning of everything. That was your rebirth. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're just done. Done shrinking. Done explaining. Done allowing people to treat your loyalty like it came with no boundaries. The new version of you doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't wait for someone to choose you after they've tried everything else. You're the one who walks now, and if they follow, they better come correct, with presence, with consistency, with effort, because the door they used to walk in and out of like it was a revolving joke, that door is gone, bricked up, buried. And behind it is someone they'll never have access to again. So don't cry for the ones who failed to love you. Don't mourn the ones who didn't even try. Let them watch. Let them feel. Let them sit in the silence they created. Because the best revenge is not rage. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. The best revenge is evolution. It's the moment they realize you didn't just move on. You became someone they'll never deserve. And that's forever. And now you breathe differently, walk differently, think differently. Not because you were forced to change, but because pain sharpened you. Experience carved truth into your spine. The betrayals, the silence, the way they made you feel invisible, it all rewired you. You don't flinch when people leave anymore. You don't chase apologies. You don't sit by your phone waiting for messages that once mattered. Because now you understand. People come and go, but peace is earned. And you've earned every drop of it. Through every sleepless night, every unanswered question, every broken promise that tore a piece of you away, you earned the right to stand tall, unshaken, and unapologetically whole. They'll wonder if you still think about them, if you still check their page, if you still care. And the truth is, you don't need to anymore, because you found something far more important than closure. You found yourself. The version of you that doesn't tolerate confusion disguised as love. The version that doesn't explain your standards like they're negotiable. The version that values peace over company, truth over attention, and silence over forced conversation. You stopped begging people to stay, stopped proving your worth to the blind, and in doing so, you reclaimed your power every ounce of it. You're no longer a character in their story. You're the author of your own. And your story? It doesn't end in heartbreak. It doesn't end in betrayal. It ends in becoming the version of yourself that the past was preparing you for. And when they see you now, calm, composed, unbothered, it won't make sense to them. How someone they hurt so deeply could rise so gracefully. But that's the beauty of your journey. You didn't rise in spite of the pain. You rose because of it. You took every ounce of it and turned it into fire, discipline, focus, boundaries, silence. And if they ever reach out again, if they ever try to come back wearing new masks and old excuses, you won't need to scream. You won't need to remind them of what they did. Your absence already did the talking. Your peace already screamed the truth. Your growth already served the lesson. Because people remember how you made them feel. And they'll never forget the day they lost someone who made even their darkest parts feel understood. So walk on, head high, voice calm, eyes cold. Not out of hate, but out of clarity. You deserved more than they were willing to give. And now, you give to yourself first. You give to the ones who show up, who stay, who don't make you beg for the bare minimum. Because now, you know your value. You know your worth. You know exactly what you bring to the table. And you'll never again let someone sit there who only came to eat, but never brought anything to share. That's your revenge. That's your freedom. That's your legacy. And they'll feel it forever. And the truth is, no matter how much time passes, they'll never outrun the echo of your absence. It will haunt the spaces they thought would feel better without you. Because eventually, even the most oblivious hearts realize what they lost. Not when they're distracted, not when they're surrounded, but when they're alone. When the silence is thick and memories start crawling back uninvited. When they stare at a message thread and see nothing but the last thing you ever said. That's when it hits. The weight, the regret, the understanding. Because they don't just miss you, they miss who they were when you loved them. The better version of themselves that only existed in your presence. But don't mistake that for love. It's just memory mixed with guilt. They don't want you back because they're ready for real love. They want you back because the world hasn't offered them a soul as rare as yours. And it won't because they weren't ready then, and they still aren't now. That's the curse of losing someone genuine. You start to crave what you once dismissed. They'll try to reach for your energy through people who only echo shadows of your depth. They'll find bodies but not presence, words but not wisdom, smiles but not safety, because what you brought was unmatched. And when something is one of a kind, Losing it doesn't come with a second chance. And you're not bitter. You're not holding on to hate. You're holding on to you now. The version of yourself you lost while trying to save someone who didn't even want to be saved. You gave your all. You offered growth, vision, love, patience, but you finally learned it's not your job to raise someone who doesn't want to rise. It's not your job to heal people who use your love as anesthesia, but refuse to face their own pain. You're not a rehab center. You're not a project. You're a gift. And not everyone is ready to receive that kind of blessing. They thought you'd break, that you'd fall apart without them. But what they didn't realize is you were breaking with them. Slowly, quietly. Every day they showed up with less love and more excuses. Every time they ignored your efforts, minimized your emotions, laughed at your needs. That's when the pieces started falling. And your walking away wasn't the fall. It was the rebuild, the rebirth. The moment you picked up what was left of your soul and said, no more. No more bleeding for the ungrateful. No more silence for the unlistening. No more shrinking for the unworthy. And from that moment on, you became dangerous. Not because you changed, but because you finally saw yourself clearly. You finally understood that you were the power all along. Not them, not their approval, not their validation. You, your love, your presence, your peace. And when you own that, when you really step into it, nobody can ever hold you hostage again. Not with words, not with love, not with guilt. You're free now. Free in a way that terrifies the ones who once controlled you.